legitimate hard targets in the region now. What is the Pentagon doing to secure those assets, stop those attacks?
Yes, the A-10 Warthog is now in the fight across the southern flank and is hunting and killing fast attack watercraft in the Straits of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz is not closed by a wall. It is closed by fear. Iran does not need to sink every ship that enters. It only needs to prove that any ship attempting to transit will be attacked. Iranian fast attack boats swarm in packs. Explosive-laden drone skiffs accelerate without warning toward anything moving in the channel. The insurance market collapses, shipping companies stand down. The oil stops moving. The United States Air Force has put an answer in the air. The A-10 Thunderbolt II is now operating over the strait. Its mission is to find every Iranian vessel threatening passage through the channel and destroy it. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was not designed for this mission. It was built to kill Soviet tanks on the plains of Central Europe to fly low and slow over a battlefield, absorbing punishment and putting rounds through armored steel. The aircraft was scheduled for retirement. The Air Force had already begun drawing down the fleet. Then the strait closed. The same characteristics that make the A-10 lethal against armor make it uniquely effective against small surface craft. It operates at low altitude below 1,000 feet, where faster jets cannot safely loiter without becoming predictable and vulnerable. It flies slowly enough to identify, track, and engage targets that are moving erratically across open water. Its loiter time over the strait far exceeds any fifth-generation aircraft. Where an F-35 passes through a sector in minutes, an A-10 stays on station for hours. The aircraft carries a specific weapons load for this mission. AGM-65 Maverick air-to-surface missiles are mounted on the underwing pylons. The Maverick uses an infrared seeker. It locks onto the heat signature of an engine, guides itself to the target, and detonates on impact. A small boat engine running at full throttle produces a clear thermal signature against the cooler water surface. APK West 2 laser-guided rocket pods are mounted alongside the Mavericks. These are 70mm rockets fitted with laser guidance kits accurate to within meters, effective against fast-moving watercraft too small for a full missile engagement. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon runs through the center of the airframe. 7 barrels, 30mm rounds, nearly 4,000 rounds per minute. At low altitude, a single firing pass from the cannon tears through the hull of a fast attack boat in under 2 seconds. The aircraft is also armed with A-9MN Sidewinder missiles on the wingtip rails. Iranian Shahed drones operate at low altitude over the strait. If one acquires the A-10, the pilot does not run. He engages. The airfield in Jordan sits in open desert. The sun is already high by the time the ground crews reach the flight line. Heat rises off the tarmac in visible waves. The A-10s are parked in a row on the apron, some under open sky. Some pulled into hardened shelters along the edge of the field. The aircraft sit low to the ground, a wide, flat fuselage, straight wings, twin engines mounted high above the tail, the massive cannon housing protruding from the nose. Crew chiefs move around each jet with checklists in hand. They work their way around the airframe methodically. Landing gear inspected. Tires checked. Control surfaces move through their range. Engine intakes inspected for foreign object debris. Any loose material ingested into a turbofan at takeoff destroys the engine from the inside. Each intake is checked by hand and by eye. The weapons are already mounted. Ordnance men in red shirts move along the pylons, checking each station. The Mavericks are inspected seeker heads uncovered, arming pins confirmed in place with red flags hanging from them. The APKC West rocket pods are checked, each tube verified loaded. The GAU-8 ammunition drum holds nearly 1,200 rounds of 30mm tungsten penetrator. The drum is full. The feed system is checked. The gun is ready. The pilots arrive at their aircraft carrying their helmets and flight bags. They conduct their own walk around independently of the crew chief. The pilot runs a hand along the cannon barrel housing, checks the targeting pod mounted beneath the nose, looks at each weapon on the pylons. Every panel on the fuselage is checked closed. Every access hatch is latched. The pilot climbs the boarding ladder on the left side of the cockpit and drops into the seat. Systems come online. Avionics. Targeting pod. Weapons management system. Radar warning receiver. The heads-up display illuminates. Radio checks are completed with the tower and with the mission controller already airborne in an E-3 Sentry circling high above the region, tracking every contact on the water in the strait below. The aircraft taxi to the runway one after another. The exhaust from the twin turbofan engines shimmers the air behind each jet as it moves into position. The throttles advance. The A-10 rolls down the runway and lifts off. Gear coming up immediately after rotation, climbing into the clear desert sky and turning south towards strait. The distance from the airfield to the operating area is significant. A KC-135 Stratotanker is already airborne and holding at a pre-planned refueling track over the region. The A-10 climbs toward the tanker's altitude and makes contact. The boom operator in the tail of the KC-135 watches the approaching fighter on a camera feed and guides the refueling boom into the receptacle on the top of the A-10's fuselage. The connection locks. Fuel flows at high volume from the tanker's tanks into the fighter's wing cells. The two aircraft hold formation in level flight, the massive tanker above and slightly ahead, the A-10 tucked in beneath, connected by the extending boom. When the tank's red full, the boom retracts. The A-10 slides out from beneath the tanker and turns toward the strait. It descends to its operating altitude. The water appears below. The targeting pod activates. The pod hangs beneath the nose and contains a forward-looking infrared camera and a laser designator. The pilot uses a hand controller on the throttle to slew the camera across the water surface below. In the midday heat, the strait appears on the cockpit display as a field of gray, the water cooler vessels and their engine exhaust appearing as brighter shapes against the darker background. Large commercial vessels are immediately identifiable by their size and their heat signature. They're classified and set aside. The pilot is looking for something smaller. Iranian fast attack boats run powerful engines that produce a concentrated heat signature at the stern. At speed, they leave a bright thermal wake across the display. Drone skiffs run hotter still. The engine, at maximum output, against the cooler water surface creates a clear white shape on the infrared display. They move in patterns. Fast, erratic, no set course, no predictable heading. They do not behave like fishing boats. They do not behave like cargo craft. The E-3 overhead calls out a contact. Bearing and approximate range are passed over the radio. The pilot slews the targeting pod toward the indicated sector. The camera finds the contact, a small craft, moving fast, no navigation lights, heading directly toward a vessel holding position in the channel. No response to radio calls on the maritime emergency frequency. The pilot designates the target. The laser locks onto the hull. The Maverick seeker head on the left pylon begins tracking the thermal return. The tone in the pilot's headset changes a steady lock indication. The aircraft descends into a shallow attack profile. The boat is still accelerating toward the vessel in the channel. The missile fires. The pilot pulls off the attack and climbs, putting distance between the aircraft and the surface. The targeting pod tracks back to the contact automatically. The display shows the water. The small boat is gone. A white thermal bloom spreads across the screen where the impact occurred. Heat from the engine, from the fuel, from the warhead detonation. The bloom fades slowly. The water returns to gray. The E-3 overhead logs the contact is neutralized. The channel in that sector is clear. The pilot checks his fuel state. Weapons remaining. Time on station. The strait runs for miles and there are more sectors assigned. The mission controller overhead is already tracking the next contact. More fast-moving shapes on the thermal display. More erratic courses over the water. The aircraft turns toward the next sector. The targeting pod is already scanning. Behind it, another A-10 is inbound from the tanker track. Fully fueled, weapons complete, descending toward the water. There will be no gap in coverage over this strait, not while this operation is running. The channel is not open yet. The boats are still out there. The hunt continues.